Are you tired of spending countless hours manually sieving through blocks and processing ores in Mods 9 to the sky? Then welcome back. Today I will show you the ultimate sieve and ore automation setup that allows you to produce tens of thousands of items with minimal effort. We will automate the most important sieving blocks, filter materials to craft chunks into ores, and create a fully automated ore to ingot processing system. Along the way, I will share some valuable insights on splitting resources, maintaining stock levels, while using different logistic mods such as Modular Routers, XNET and LaserIO. If you're into modern Minecraft, make sure to hit the subscribe button because I will soon be uploading a logistics ranking video as part of my mod ranking series. Before we get started, you can find a Google Sheet with the needed resources for this build in the video description. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, and here we are on my copy of the layout we have over there. So this is where I built it originally next to the starter base. And here is a rectangle version, which is easier for you to copy. And we're going to start off in the top left with the crusher setup. And here's EpicEnchants from the future. To quickly tell you, I made a mistake when I calculated the resources. So this is now the real amount of resources you're going to need. First off, you're going to build a second layer on top of this base layer, which will help us later on when we set up the lava and some of those fluids so they don't flow down the base. Okay, with the first layer added, I would now recommend you to place down your drawers. So this is where then our crushed materials will be stored. So this one at the beginning will be a wall, and then we kind of split them up one after another. So we have one, then a space, and then we continue that for our 4 base materials, which will be deep slate, black rock, endstone, and netherrack. I think actually those two will be mixed up. And then we have 3 for the dust, for the gravel, the sand, and the dust. And then at the end here we have the soul sand. So now on the back side we are also going to place our flux hammers already. And here it's important how you place them. So they have a certain direction, which is that they have like this frontal part, this open frontal part, which needs to be connected to a storage. And in this case, this is the right way. So you just stand on top of the drawer and you place them down until you have the 4 of them. Here we have the gravel, the sand, and the dust. The gravel we don't have to place one since we will move it later on from a hammer over there. But instead we're going to place here our 2 hammers, and actually we need a second one here. So we go from gravel to sand to dust. And then over here we actually don't need one. We will place it in a second over there. Okay, and next up we're going to make a hole. This one will be 3 blocks wide, and then we just leave one edge on both sides in this case. And this is where we are going to place down our mycelial, which we're going to use to make witch water. And this one we will then use to make our soul sand. Okay, and next up we're going to set up our mycelium. So this one you can get from the dirt. So if you sieve dirt, you can get mycelium grass seeds, I think that's what I called. And then you can just also make this a grass area, put one of those seeds, and then it will spread the mycelium over time. And we're going to quickly place down all of that. I also quickly added here a wall so that we don't fall down, and then we're going to place here a slab. This one makes sure that we don't destroy the mycelium, because if you place a full block, the mycelium will get turned into normal dirt, and that's not what we want. And now we can place here our flux hammer. We make sure that it's actually in this direction, so it points towards there. And then we can also place our last flux hammer, which is combined with our cobble generator. And this one will be placed right here. And then right on top of that, we can place our flux hammer. This one is now already getting filled up with cobblestone. So you can see very quickly. So you don't have to make an additional drawer. This way you save yourself some resources. Now with the hammer set, we're starting with the core sieving setup, which is the cobblestone, gravel, sand, and dust. And for that, we have to move our cobblestone here, which is getting turned into gravel, into multiple storages. So first off, we want to aim for this oak drawer, which will just store the gravel as itself. Then we have this one, which will then turn it into sand, which will then transform. And this one will make it to dust. And at the same time, we actually also aim for this one over here, because this one will turn it into sand, which we then use to make our soul sand. So let's set up the modular router. The good thing about this one is it also works as storage, so we don't have to add an additional drawer. We just put down the modular router and we are good to go. For the modular router, you are going to need a distributor module. And to use this one, you just sneak, right click, and then you can see target edited. And then we can do that for those 3 over here, kind of in a diagonal. And then lastly, for the flux hammer over there. And then we can just put that inside of our module. Additionally to that, you will need speed upgrades and stack upgrades, because as you can see, we have a large amount of resources and they will be processed very quickly. So we have to make sure that they also get transported very quickly. So in this case, we need the maximum layout. Additionally, I recommend to use the muffler upgrade. This one prevents the resource to like fly to each of the storages visually. This is not going to make any speed differences. It's just purely visually, and it reduces a bit of lag. Okay, next up, we're going to add in our upgrades. So as you can see right now, we need energy, but we can also add a upgrade slot, or can add something into the upgrade slot. And we're going to use netherite upgrades. So those are the best ones. You can't add more of them. And that way we can process 1 stack at a time, and we add them into each of those. So all of the ones which are directly connected to the cobblestone, so each of those 4 gets the maximum upgrade. Additionally, we also need power for those 4. And for that, I'm using ender gates, and you need at least blazing if you want to use this setup, because this one needs 8,000 and the other one, which is lower, a lower ender gate, only produces 5,000. So 20,000 is the way to go. You just place it on top, and I have connected it to a storage system. That way it is already filling up with power. I'm going to quickly add the other ones, and that way you can now see that each of them is getting filled up. And when we have a look at the front, we can see each of the 3 is filling up almost equally with resources. Now we're going to cover the soul sand part, and those are the gold upgrades. So those are the upgrades which we're actually going to add into this hammer. So we add our drawer right here, so the resources can be moved, so the sand can be moved into this drawer. And then we also need some power. For that, the 500 FE per tick ender gate is totally enough. So we just add that on top. It should fill up quite quickly. And as you can see, we only need 64, so we are totally fine. And it's starting to fill up with sand. What we're going to place here are oak barrels. So you need 11 in total. We just place them down in the middle until the end. And here we place our sink. So this will be our source for the water. And then we connect fluid pipes from the sink towards the on top of all of those barrels. So this will provide each of them with water. And then we make sure that we use our pipe wrench to output the water from the sink. And as you can see, it's already slowly filling up. We want this, however, to be instant if possible. And then that's the reason why we have to add a advanced pipe upgrade, which fills 2 millibuckets per tick. And we only need 1 millibucket per tick. And that way it's almost instant filling up. And you can see we have witch water. And this is what we need to turn sand into soul sand. So now you place a pipe on your sand, and then you make sure that it outputs. You don't need any upgrades for this output. And then we just place our pipes. We have to make sure that we break down those mushrooms quickly. And then as you can see, each of them turns into soul sand. And now we just need to output that on the other side. One tip also, place down some pipes or any other block which blocks potentially mushrooms, because you don't want suddenly mushrooms growing in your crushing setup. So that's pretty important. And then we place the pipes on the other side as well, breaking the mushrooms. And here we have to quickly go through and go with the wrench on each single one of them so that it pulls the items outside of those barrels. With that done, we now just have to connect this over here. Make sure that you disconnect it from the flux hammer. And then we just connect it to our drawer over here. And that way we should have now also this one slowly filling up with soul sand. Next, we're going to cover the endstone part. So for endstone, the most generic way to generate it is through a extractor. And we have to destroy 6 blocks here and then another 6 below that. I destroyed 1 too much over there. And we're going to place purple pillars at the bottom. So like this, you can either craft these or you can find them in the end. And then you need 6 endstone on top of that. And then we're going to place our extractor. So we make sure that we can actually turn them around. So we can use this one like this, place our drawers on top of this. So this is where all of our endstone will be put towards. And then we can place all of them down, and you can already see the endstone is getting produced. And then we also do the same thing here. And you can actually easily turn them around. So yeah, potentially you have to just break it and place it again. They are a bit more on the buggy side. And they're already filling up. Now we just need to connect this to our flux hammer. For that, we place down a storage controller. So that way we only have to put one pipe, making everything a bit more compact. Then we use a linking tool to connect each of those drawers to our storage controller. And then you first click on your storage controller. This kind of activates it, and then you can just click on all of your other storages. And now each of them should be connected. And then you just place a item pipe at the bottom, make sure it outputs its items into the flux hammer. And then we can also add here a basic upgrade, a basic pipe upgrade. That way we can efficiently move out all the items, otherwise it will not be fast enough. And now to make our hammer work, we just have to add in our diamond upgrades. Here you need 2 for this amount of endstone. And on top of that, you can place your ender gate. In this case, with 2 diamond ones, you only need the ender gate basic, which you can just add on top. It's going to fill up. And that way we're going to have very soon our crushed endstone. Now we're going to cover the netherrack. So for that, we're going to use the igneous extruder. I hope that was the right way to say this. And we're going to break down those 3 blocks and then also break down one in the middle, because here we're going to place our netherrack. On top of that, we place the extruder, and then on one side we place witch water, and then you need some lava. And as you can see, we're already producing netherrack. To speed this up, you can also add components. So this is the way in the thermal series to boost machines. And this is the highest one you can add in this version of AutoMods 9. And as you can see, it's filling up quickly. So we now move this over to our flux hammer with some pipes. I set this one to extrude and add in here a improved pipe upgrade. And to make this flux hammer work, we can then add in our diamond upgrades. So we need 3 of them to efficiently move out all the netherrack in a second. And additionally, we need the ender gate hardened, because that's the amount of power this machine needs to work properly. And for our last 2 materials, we're also going to need ice. And now I'm going to show you a quick way how to get some ice into the AutoMods 9 to the sky. For that, you need a sink. Next to that, you need a atomizer, a compactor, and a compacting drawer. So those 4 items, and then you just connect them. So you have the fluid pipe between those 2, and then some item pipes between these. And we make sure that each of them is outputting to the next one. And also the atomizer and the compactor both need energy. So in this case, I have some ender gate basics here. And then you can already see this is starting to work. It's producing water, which we then can already see is transformed into ice. And this one should get moved. I think for the first one, you actually have to put it manually so the drawer knows what you want to compact. So if you have your ice in your hand, you click on it, and then you can see the ice is getting produced. And over time, it's going to produce packed ice and also blue ice. And you're going to need 1 of each of them. Now with our ice produced, we can start already on the blackstone. For blackstone, you need the blue ice. So we place 1 blue ice, we place our extruder in the center, and we place some lava. And you can see we produce blackstone. Also, again, we're going to place our component to speed it up. The 12x is here the best one you can do. And then we put the item pipes, outputting the items, adding our speed upgrade. And then also into the hammer, we add our 3 diamond upgrades and our hardened ender gate. And this way we already should get our crushed blackstone. And now we are at our last material, which is deep slate, which is the best if you want to produce ores. And for that, you need packed ice. You need down here a magma block. On top of that, the extruder. And on the other side, a lava bucket. And that way we produce deep slate. We add in our component to speed up the production. And then we do the same thing previously, adding the pipes, adding the same upgrade, adding again also here 3 diamond upgrades, a ender gate hardened, and that way this one is also set up. And to quickly also tell you how to get the magma block, this one is easy. You just need 4 magma creams, and this one you can actually get from crushed blackstone. So this is also helpful by doing it in this direction, that you can also get the crushed blackstone to then make the magma block. Okay, and after giving it some finishing touches, this is our finished crushing setup. So this is all you need to fully crush all the main materials. Okay, and now we're getting to the second part, the sieving and filtering of the materials. And for that, you are going to need all of these items. And this time I checked properly. We're going to start out with the flux sieve. And for that, we first place down 2 chests where we will put in our items. And inside of this one, as it is a sophisticated chest, we can also add a void upgrade, which is quite important because inside of here, we're going to add something, which are pebbles. And what you can do, you can actually just drag and drop from JEI into the filter. So you don't have to have it in your inventory. You can just put those inside of your inventory. And to give it a try, I can quickly activate this, give myself some items, and it gets deleted. And this is how it should look like with those 2 pebbles blocked. On top of this, we're then going to place our flux sieve, and we're going to place a netherite mesh and a netherite upgrade in both of them. And to power them, we're going to need a ender gate blazing. As we've seen previously, this is the power we need to make them work. And now we only have to move our crushed materials into our sieves. And for that, the best is the modular router. And we're going to use a distributor module. Make sure that the 2 you're going to need are separated before you use them to select something. And we're going to sneak right click on each of the drawers. And the great thing is it fits perfectly. Since we need 8 and we have 8, we can put it into our drawer, but it's not going to do anything because right now it's going to transfer out of the drawer. So we have to turn this around, and you can see we are accumulating some dust. To speed this up, we can add our speed upgrade and our stack upgrade, which should instantly move stack-wise the items. And now the only thing we have to do is to send the items to our sieves. So for that, we take our second module, we click on both of them, and we put them inside. And we should see that the items are getting moved inside. So now let's take care of the next step, which is the chunks, since we want to turn the chunks into ore. Our crafters are going to be placed right here. We need 2 of them, as the maximum amount of recipes is not enough to do it with 1 of them. And then we place some item pipes. But before we connect those 2, we can add a filter, because we only want certain recipes to be done in one of them and certain recipes to be done in the other one. And for that, we have the filter module. However, sadly, the filter module doesn't work like the sophisticated storages. So here you can't drag and drop. You have to get them from the chest, for instance, or have them already somewhere to set up the filter. In this case, we have to put 6 chunks in each of them. So in this case, let's take iron, copper, gold, aluminum, silver, and lead. And then you just click on each of them to add them to the filter. Before we do the second one, let's already create the recipes, since everything needs to line up. In this case, let's open up the first one in the crafter. We then add our chunks up there, and then we can add our recipe. And we're going to repeat that for all of our chunks. Great. Now with our 6 recipes added, we just have to add our filter in this nice little slot. We are going to change the speed mode to fast, because why not? And then we add our ender gate on top to give it some power, and our first crafter is done. And now we're going to repeat the same thing for our second filter, as we just did. We had lead was our last one, so now we're going to do platinum, nickel, uranium, osmium, tin, and zinc. And actually, iridium is currently, as far as I know, not included into the mod pack, so we don't need it, which is very helpful for us. So we have a nice even number for each of our recipes. And that's our filter. And then we're going to do the same thing we just did with the recipes. Okay, and all recipes are added. And now we just add in our filter module. We change the speed mode. We add our ender gate on top. And now both of them are fully ready to craft. And that's what we can do. Now we connect our item pipe from the chest to both of them. And it should only allow them to move in the chunks. However, we also need to change this one to output as well. So now you can see that it should start to fill up. And what you can do here is add a diamond upgrade. So this is the optimum speed to quickly move out all of the chunks as quickly as possible. And we can already see we have a good amount of ores produced. And to collect all of those items into one central spot, we're going to place down another chest, which needs only a single slot, and this one we're going to add in a filter upgrade. Because the one thing we need to make sure is that the items from the chest back there, which are the chunks, have no chance of reaching this chest. And we're going to do that by using this filter. So we can again here just search for chunk, and in this case you can just drag and drop every single chunk inside of this UI, and they get automatically blocked from moving inside of here. With that out of the way, we can then connect our chests together. So we're going to connect this one over here on this side and make sure that this one outputs its items, and add a pipe upgrade. And this one is going to fill up very quickly, but we're going to change that in a second. And then we just connect our crafters like this and make sure that both of them output. And here a gold upgrade or an improved pipe upgrade is enough to move out all of the items quickly enough as well. And now we're going to cover another modular router. This one is responsible for filtering these items, because what we want to do is move all the ores directly into the setup. If you remember previously, this is where the ores are going to get mined. And for that, we need to split them up, because there are some resources, for instance, like the gas tier or the apatite, which we don't want to have in the system. So we are going to use the modular router to split those resources. And for that, first off, we're going to place a puller module. And this one is just going to pull the items from the chest. We can change the settings here to pull in from the left. So it's starting to pull. Again, as always, make it max speed. As you can see, the chest is very full. And then we come to the sender modules. So there will be one sending to the front, which will be a chest, which we can then, for instance, move the items to a refined storage system. And then there will be on the right side, it will move it towards a functional storage setup. For that, we put in our two sender modules. We can open them up. One is sending to the front and one is sending to the right. And to do the filtering based on the ore, we're going to use a regex filter. And you just have to type in ore. And as simple as that, you can then open up your modules and then add in the filter. So what's important is that the first one, which sends to the front, is set to blacklist. That means it's not allowing the ores to be sent to your refined storage applied energistic setup. And then on the second one, you want to make sure that this one is set to whitelist. And now we just place our storage controller and our 6 double oak drawers. We're going to connect each of them to our controller, and right now nothing is happening because, well, the modular router is stuck. So for that, I'm going to quickly place down the chest, and hopefully it's going to move some of the items already here. I have to quickly connect this to some refined storage to make some space. Okay, with our refined storage set up, we just place our cables and we're going to place a importer, and this one is then going to slowly add items. To speed it up, you can add some stack upgrades, which is definitely the best you can do. And then from what I've tested, 2 speed upgrades should be enough to get the chest empty. Right now it's pretty full because right now it's too many of the same materials. Okay, as it seems like right now, actually we do need 3, because right now all of the items are getting moved here, and later on some of the items are going to get moved over there. So we now have each of our ores getting placed inside of our machine. What I would recommend you to do is making sure to really lock them so that even if they get empty, they don't get mixed around. And what I recommend also is to add void upgrades, because it's just going to reduce the chance of lag, because it prevents the drawers to infinitely trying to fill up. Now we are at the part where we are going to mine all of these ores. As this is the most efficient way, we're going to use all of these items. To start this off, we're going to need 15 modular routers, and I'm going to quickly show you once what you have to do, and then you have to repeat that 15 times. So we have our modular router. We're going to place inside one placer module, which places blocks, and then we just set it to place in the front. And then inside of it, we just max out the speed and the mufflers. And then this is what we have to repeat for every single modular router. One tip you can do to speed this up is actually clicking on the whole stack of modules and then set all of them to the front. That way each single one of them is set to the front, and then you can spread them in your inventory, something like this. And then if you open your modular router, you can do a circle, and then we can repeat that same thing. As our next step, we're going to connect our storage controller with all of our modular routers. So for that, just place your cable, and then here it's a bit annoying. You have to disconnect every single one of them. Otherwise, you can make it a bit bigger, the whole setup, and just leave one more space. And then you just move them over here and you fill the whole wall. And what you have to make sure is that this one is set to output, and then add in a ultimate upgrade. Now we're going to place down what we need to break this wall. So we're going to use integrated dynamics, and specifically the player simulator. So first off, we place down a chest. This one will be the chest where we place the pickaxe, which will be used. And then we use a item interface. On top of that, a logic cable, and then a player simulator pointing towards the wall. And then we actually right click on the player simulator, which opens up this kind of UI. And here we actually place our variable count. So we place it here under click, and then we change this click in our properties to left click. So you have to go through a couple of them, and then you come here to left click and unclick this one. Before we continue with the collection system of the ores, we're going to actually place down our second wall of drawers. So for that, we place our storage controller, and then we place 8 double oak drawers. Each of them is going to get 4 copper upgrades, as I mentioned in previous videos already. I think for most people this is enough, because one of them is going to allow you to, let's quickly test it with the oak one, 4.2 million items. And this is enough for most people. Unless you craft the most crazy items, this is all you need. And copper upgrades are very cheap to make. And later on, you can still always upgrade to a higher level as well. And we're also going to add a void upgrades. And now we will repeat the same thing for all of our 8 drawers. Now we just connect our controller to each of the drawers, and then we are done with setting up the storage. Now to the collection system. First off, we're going to place down a normal chest, or better, a sophisticated chest, because we're going to need a filter. Because we want to make sure that this chest is only pulling in items in a second, which are the materials we're going to produce. Otherwise, if you pull in items, let's say like things you drop, if somebody dies or a mob dies, this chest can quickly clog up with items which it can't store in the drawers over there, and it's going to make a huge mess. So this is very important. Make sure that you add the advanced filter, and then you change it in the filter to tags, and then you take any kind of raw material, for instance, raw copper or gold. And then if you add this, you have 2 choices, which is forge raw materials, and then normally forge raw materials and the one you currently selected. So we choose the first one, and this now allows us to only move items which are raw ores, which is the only thing we should get by breaking those walls. On top of this, we're going to place our advanced item collector, and we can quickly activate the range to show us how big this currently is. And I would definitely recommend you to make some adjustments. So first off, we're going to make it less wide. So let's see. Yeah, that's the X. That was already a good change. And then on the Z axis, I would actually try to go a bit bigger. Something like this is pretty good, because we are going to place a wall here, so there shouldn't be any more items flying outside of this. Theoretically, you can also decrease the Y height, because we don't need it to be that high. So maybe we can do actually down to level 2. And this should be the perfect size for our collector, so we don't collect anything unnecessary potentially. And next to this chest, we're going to place down a modular router. This one we will be responsible for moving the items from this chest to our functional storage over there. So we're going to use a sender module MK2, with which we just sneak right click on our storage controller, which we can then just add inside of here. We're going to add our upgrades. And we also need a puller module, which is going to pull the items from the chest. Sadly, I forgot this one in the resource overview, so please make sure that you have this one. And then you can pull the items from the right side. And now it should start pulling everything which is going to end up in this one. And now we're going to prepare our pickaxe. For that, we're going to need a reforging table from Apotheosis. We need a smithing table, and we need an anvil. And really important, we need a pickaxe which is indestructible. There are a couple of different options. The most easy one is most likely the Ultimatium pickaxe. You could also do the Supremium pickaxe, also is indestructible. Or there is also the Eternal Stellar. I made a video about this one already, where you can turn every single object into an indestructible item. So those are the 3 options you have. I would most likely recommend you to just go for the Ultimatium pickaxe. And first off, we're going to reforge this pickaxe. So the goal, what we want to have out of this reforge, as you can see, we have different options, is actually exactly the second one. Because we want a 5x3 area. This is what we just prepared. And we want as many sockets as possible. Another thing you could potentially look into is to have mining speed if possible. But actually, I'm pretty happy with what we have right here, and I'm going to continue with that. Next up, we can add our gems. So for that, I have 3 gems I would recommend you to get, which is the Gem of Earth, which is going to add more fortune to your pickaxe, which means more loot. We have the Ender Search, which is going to add 2 levels of enchantment to whatever enchantment we add. And then also the Slipstream Gem, which is going to give us mining speed. And we just add each of them inside of our smithing table and just craft them together, just like this. The last thing missing is just the enchantments. So for that, the aim is to have as much fortune and efficiency as possible. That's the only 2 enchantments you're going to need. And this leaves us now with fortune 13 and efficiency 10. And before I start this machine, I'm going to quickly close this up with some glass so we don't have items flying around randomly. And then it's as easy as just placing the pickaxe inside of the chest, and it should start destroying the wall. And as you might have just seen, I made a mistake. So actually I made a mistake in the chest. And here you have to make sure that this one is not set to block, but actually to allow. So this is very important. And as you can see, we mine a lot of resources. Our chest is almost not being able to keep up with it. And we're consistently moving our items inside our first chest. And we already have 24,000 copper ore. And now after a couple of seconds, actually our situation has calmed down. And we can slowly see our ores, our raw materials filling up. We already have a couple of thousands each. Also, again, what I recommend you is the moment one of the drawers is completely filled up with 2 different materials, you can just click with your configuration tool and make sure to lock both of them so that whatever happens to the resources, you have those 2 already nice and clean, and then the other ones will slowly fill up with the other materials. And to give you one tip, while our wall is filling up, you can hear a very annoying noise, which is our wall of ore is breaking over and over again, and it's getting really annoying very quickly. And I have a secret tip for you. For that, you have to open up this audio setting, and what you can actually do is you can set up a anchor. So this one is now anchor 1, and you can set this one to your current location and tell it to mute certain blocks. And the peace, the quiet is right here. And the good thing is also you can adjust the radius. So by doing like 32 might be a bit too big, but you can actually set it to, let's say, 10. And then that way, only close to here, you can't hear the breaking, which is already so much nicer. But if we go over here, we can actually hear it again. Okay, and now as you can see, our wall started to fill up and we have tens of thousands of ores or raw materials already. However, there are still 2 empty drawers. And actually what I just realized when I set this up, we're actually missing one. So we need a 9th drawer, and again with the same upgrades in this case. So we are going to use 4 copper upgrades and 1 void upgrade. Also, make sure to link the new thing we added. And the question is, what are we using this for? So we're using those additional slots, not for the ores we produce from here, but actually for materials which are currently getting moved into our storage system. And to be specific, these items are fluorite, sulfur, cinnabar, apatite, and lastly there we have raw ESNeum. All of those materials can be crushed and often are more valuable when crushed. So fluorite, if you crush it, you can actually use it to make yourself some polonium pellets and also plutonium pellets, which you're going to need if you want to make a fusion reactor. Then we have sulfur. This one is not that necessary. Raw ESNeum is definitely helpful, so that's something you should do, especially because you need it for occultism, and occultism is how we're going to multiply our ores. So then we have cinnabar. This one has some more recipes on thermal expansion if you crush it as well. And very important as well is apatite, because I know a lot of people like to use the phytogenic insulator, which can be used to speed up the growing process for mystical agriculture. And you can craft Phytogrow, which is the best fertilizer. And if you break it down, the apatite, you get 3 times the amount of dust, which you can use equally to make the same recipes. And before we start moving the items from over there into into our drawers, we should place down the materials already. That way it just stays nice and clean and we don't suddenly get other materials placed into those drawers. So in this case, I'm going to place down the cinnabar, sulfur, fluorite, and ESNeum. You can kind of freely choose. Sadly, there is like one which doesn't fully work out, so we have 1 open slot. And now we're going to make sure that the items are getting moved over there or like split up between this chest and our functional storage over there. So how do we make the filtering work? First off, we're going to make some blacklist adjustments. So here, this is the blacklist which sends the items to the front of the chest. So the normal chest we have here in the front. And we're just going to move in all the materials we just talked about. So the raw ESNeum, difficult names, the fluorite, and also apatite. So this is how it should look like for you as well. And then you have, first off, we're going to use a sender module because we want to send 100% of the ESNeum into this one. So we just use a sender module MK2, and then we put this one inside of here. We have to make sure that this one is also set to ESNeum, so that way it's only sending this one to 100%. For the other materials, we're going to use a distributor module. And for that, we are going to select the chest, right? This is the one part where we want to split the materials. And then you can select here the functional storage controller. If you want to increase the percentage of how the material is split, you can actually also select a draw. Let's say we want to have a 2-to-1 ratio. That means 2 apatite gets moved into this drawer and only 1 apatite gets moved over there. Since you might have another recipe, you want to use the normal one, then you can also click on this drawer. And that way right now we have a 2-to-1 ratio because it tries to move the apatite here and it also moves the apatite into the drawer itself. And that way you double the percentages. And then we just put that inside of our modular router. And we also have to make sure that we add into our new distributor module our materials which we want to get sent. So we actually do the opposite of what we have here in the sender module. We actually do this one here as a whitelist of moving those 5 items split up between this and this one over there. And now you can see here which items we're going to need for our crushing setup. Really important are here the crushers and then also the XNET for our logistics. And now we're getting to the crushing part, and we're going to use the Occultism crushers. Those are demons, which are like entities, and if you throw some ore towards them, they then crush those into dust, and they are the most efficient, even better than Mechanism, because they transform 1 raw object into 6 dust, which is the highest turnover you can potentially get. And in our case, we're going to use 6 Merit Crusher. Those are the most powerful. And if you want to know how to make them, you can just check the Occultism book. So this is the Dictionary of Spirits. And then you have the Getting Started area. And then when you get here to the Summoning Rituals, you just go over here on the left side, Summoning Rituals. And here at the bottom, you have the Crushers, which you can then upgrade from one to another. And we want the last one, which is going to give us the highest turnover. In my case, I'm going to just use those simplified items, which just spawns them directly. And this is how they are going to look like. And as you can see, they start moving around. So what I often do is just quickly catch them. And then one thing which is important, what we're going to use is the shrinking device. So with the shrinking device, we can actually change the player size, but also the size of a entity. So right now, when I do use this, it's set to 0.2 and I use a sneak right click. You can see I'm way lower. I'm almost the height of this sacrificial bowl, and I can turn this off by sneak right clicking. And this also works on entities, as I just said. So you can sneak left click or just left click by itself. And then our demon is very small, which makes it way more compact. So that's definitely helpful for us. And then we're going to place our seats. So in total, we are going to place 6 seats, but you can easily extend it to the back and could fill all of those with crushers over time and just progress with them, because actually the crushers are the current bottleneck of this setup. So if you want to make the speed even faster, get more crushers. And what we are going to do with our soul gem, we are going to sneak, right click, and then it's going to place our crusher on one of the pillars and he can't move anymore. And he will be the most efficient worker you've ever seen. And now we just repeat the same thing with our other crushers. So we just spawn another one, we make him small, we catch him, and then we just place him on the seat. And that's what we will do for all 6 of them. And this is our last one. And now we have our 6 crushers. And yeah, that's a good start for our ore processing unit. And before we start connecting our resources from our functional storage setup here to our crushers, we have to actually make sure that our next setup over here, our storage, is ready, because otherwise this will quickly overflow with dust and then we can't do anything. It's going to lag and we don't want that. So we take some storage controllers or a storage controller, some drawers, and our void upgrade. Then we're going to place our storage controller and our oak drawers, in total 9 of them. And we're going to place them like this at best. And then we add first off a void upgrade to every single one of them. So in general, this is always best practice. And then we have actually only 8 copper upgrades, because most of the dust we actually don't want to accumulate, because we want to turn it into ingots, as you saw in the video. But there are some materials which we want to accumulate, which are the apatite dust. Actually, you can see it here. So those, the cinnabar, sulfur, fluoride, and the apatite, we actually want to keep the dust as it is. We don't want to burn it or turn it into ingots. So what I would recommend you to do is like just take those 4 here and those there. Oh. And like this. One thing I can recommend you to do already right now is to take one of each of those resources and manually drop them to your crushers, because we want to already get some dust so we can set up this side of the materials because it's very important where the resources end up in, and we don't want like copper or iron to end up in those drawers. So we just place our sulfur, apatite, cinnabar, and our fluorite, and then we can already lock them. So we are totally sure that our materials are going to end up here, and we don't really care how the materials are going to get placed in any of those. Now we're almost ready with our functional storage wall, but actually there's one more material we're going to move over there. And this one's actually already inside of our storage over here in our refined storage. And this is draconium dust. So this is actually a material we want to definitely burn into ingots. And we're not going to lock it because otherwise this second slot will not be filled with any kind of item. And now we just need to make sure that our storage controller is properly connected, set to add, and then we can just add every single one of them. The first thing you're going to build inside of here is actually the collector. So this is our modular router, and we're going to place inside of that a vacuum module. So this one will pull all the items in a 6-block radius inside of our modular router. And to make sure that we, again, don't plug it up similar to what we did over there, we can actually add here a regex filter. And this one will be dust, because everything we will crush will turn into dust. And then we add that one inside of our module, and make sure to set this one to whitelist, so it only allows dust inside of the inventory. Next up, we have the sender module. So this is our goal. So we just set here our storage controller, and then put that one here over here. And then we add in our stack upgrades and our speed upgrades. And now let's get to the XNET part. First off, we're going to place our modular routers. So those are the ones which are responsible for dropping the items on top of our demons. So we're going to need 6 of them. The orientation here is not important. You can just place them like this, and then we set them to drop downwards anyway. And for that, we need the dropper module. We set this one to down already when they are in a stack. That makes it quicker. We split them up, and then you just open them up and just quickly drop them in. And then over here, we're going to place down our XNET controller. So this one will be responsible for, well, controlling everything we're going to do with the logistics, like how we are going to move the items over there. And there's a specific reason why we use this one over any other modular router, for instance, or pipes. And I will get to that in a second. But first, let's connect our machines. So this is a advanced blue connector. This one is important to be placed next to everything which needs to get controlled. So in this case, we want to control the storage controller, and we also want to, well, control our controller. And then we also want to control the modular routers. So that's the 6 we need as well here, and that's our 7. And then we just connect each of them with some normal cables. So those are blue network cables. We need to make sure that the colors align, and then it should look something like this. And if we look inside of this, we can see all of our blocks are connected. However, before we continue, we're going to place down our ender gate, which is going to provide some nice energy for our machine, and then we can get started. First off, let's talk about channels. Channels limit what kind of item, what kind of resource can be used in this channel. So for instance, what we can set is like chemicals, energy, logic, storage, and the one we care about is actually items, which is the most simple one actually. And then we're going to click in our first block or controller or connector actually, and then we're going to set it to create. And right now this one is set to insert, and then you can change this one to extract. And this is already pretty much done actually, because here you normally need to adjust the amount and the speed of how quickly the items drop down. And I will show a quick table somewhere on the screen right now, which will show you how many you need up to 8 crushers. Because if you have less crushers, the items are not supposed to drop as quickly because the crusher can't keep up. The more crushers you have, the quicker you can set this thing up. And in our case, with 6 crushers, we're going to drop 1 item every 10 ticks. And the reason why we're using XNET is actually this button, because it allows us to change how the items get extracted from the storage. And in our case, we want to set it to order. And what this does is it's going to move 1 item from every single slot, so to say. So this is slot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And it's only going to pull 1 each. That means we have like an equal crushing experience, so to say. And then to just add the modular routers, you just click on create, and they should work perfectly. As you can see here, you can already maybe hear some crushing in the background. Also, before we continue, we have to change the channel from priority to round robin. That way, all of the resources get dropped in 1 round each for each modular router. And we can see that all of the items getting crushed. We can add also some glass in front of this so that no dust is spilling out. And then everything should get moved over here. One thing you have to do, because you can see some of the resources are starting to accumulate. What often happens with storage controller, if you pre-block some of these slots, that some of the materials are getting doubled. So for instance, down here we have sulfur, even though we have sulfur over there. So we're going to select this one, and now it's filling up with osmium, for instance. We can put the sulfur over there. Same thing here for the cinnabar. Just click on it, remove it, and then now we have zinc. And sometimes you need to kind of sort this out. Alternatively, you can also like try to properly set it up, like crush every single material once, place them all nice and neatly how you want them to be, and then you don't have this problem. But now it seems like we are good, if I'm not incorrect. And I think it's already starting to clean up. So now we don't have any blockers. Everything is moving nice and quick. And that's perfectly as we wanted. And now I also quickly just locked all of the drawers. So if even one of the materials should go to 0, we won't have any cleaning up problem later down the line. Before we continue with our smelting part, however, we have to quickly make sure that our draconium dust, which is currently all still getting moved over here, is actually getting split up. So here we're going to do the same thing we did previously. We're going to change some filters, and we are going to add a distributor module. First off, we have to change here our sender module, and we're going to set a blacklist to draconium dust. So again, just drag and drop that in, and now it should actually quite quickly block this system. Maybe we're quicker than that. And then we are going to use our module. We are going to set it to this chest. And then we are going to set it to both the drawer and to the storage controller. Because we want more materials, like we want more of the dust to get melted down actually. Because there's mostly recipes for the ingots and not that many recipes for the dust. And now we can go inside of here and we're going to place that down. And actually we have to make sure that this one is set to whitelist, and then we set this one to draconium dust. And this way right now it is getting blocked from moving directly to the front, and then we actually only allow it to go through this distributor to like get split up between all of these. And now we're going to cover the ingot part of this whole setup. So for that, first off, we're going to make our storage for our ingots. So we need a storage controller, some oak drawers, void upgrades, and a copper upgrade. And make sure that we have our typical tools down here. We place down our storage controller and then our 7 oak drawers just like this. And we're going to add a void upgrade for every single one of them. And then we add our copper upgrade. So it should be 4 each, which comes out to 28. And that is our last drawer. And we are ready with this. And now we just need to connect it. So let's click on this one and let's add each of them. Now let's quickly set up our furnace. For that we need a netherite furnace with a factory augment, and we're going to need some power. So in this case I'm using a hardened ender gate, and we're just going to place our netherite furnace just like this. We can just right click with our upgrade, and then we can see already it needs some power. We're going to make sure that it has that. So sneak right click below it, and then we can just close this up, and it's starting to fill up. We're going to change those two settings to auto input and output, and make sure that that we keep in mind how the items get input and output. This is important in a second when we connect this whole thing with LaserIO. And now for LaserIO, let's first place down our laser node for our furnace. So this one is just like that, and then we can click inside of this. And to give you a quick explanation of LaserIO, you're able to actually target every single side of this block. In this case, we're currently targeting the netherite furnace. And here we're going to add in our item card, which allows us to put in items. And also if we set it to extract, we can also extract items. But first we're going to set input. And here we have to make sure that, as we just said, that the input is set to the top. So we click here, open this up. And when it's set to insert, we're going to change here from the basic one to up. This is important. Then we are going to also set our second laser node right over here behind our storage controller. And this one will be a bit more complicated. So here we want to aim for our storage controller, add in our item card, and here we want to add in a counting filter. This filter allows us to leave a certain amount of items inside of the storage controller. So this allows us to keep, let's say, 200 dust of every single one we have inside of this machine. And we're going to first set it to extract. And now what we have to do is actually get the different dusts. So you can just quickly type in dust and then just drag and drop them as we've done previously and just add them in. To increase the amount of how many items are supposed to get stored or left behind, you can scroll, and then if you scroll up, you increase the amount. You can also left click to increase the amount, right click to decrease the amount. If you shift left click, it's going up in 10 intervals, and if you press Control, it's going to add one full stack. So our goal is to get this one to 200, so let's quickly do that. And now we just repeat the same thing. The fastest way, if you want to reach 200, for instance, is to do a Control left click 3 times. You can also leave it at that number if you are fine with that, but I'm a bit too much of a perfectionist, so I have to do 200 perfectly. And we just go through all of them. You can just follow all the materials down here. The only one where you have to be careful is iridium. This one doesn't exist right now. And this is how it's going to look like if you add in all the generic ores. So all the ones we definitely want to smelt down. And then we have a couple of ones which are not in the first columns. So for that, it's often easier to just search for them. So for instance, we have the eosinium dust. In this case, actually, there is not much of a recipe. So for instance, you need them for the crushers, but otherwise you don't really need them. So what you could do is actually set a lower amount. So you would just drag and drop it in. Let's say we only want to keep 1 stack if we want to make more crushers. And then the same thing we have to do for draconium, even though here we already have a large amount of dust inside of our system because the dust is already produced over there. So what I would recommend you to do to just add it as 1. If you don't add any draconium dust, it's not going to move it out of this chest. So 1 or a higher number, but definitely you have to add some draconium dust inside of this UI. Additionally, I would recommend you to add 1 card overclocker, because on the side over here, to quickly show it, you have the transfer amount, which is the amount of items per transfer, which are getting moved. So you can increase it up to 8 in the base version, and the speed. And this one you can increase, but you can't decrease below 20 ticks. But if you add a card overclocker, you can increase those values up to 16 and decrease it down to 15. And this is, from my experience, the amount you are going to need. And it should at this point already start moving the items over here. Oh, wait, no. It's not going to move the items over here because we need to connect the 2 laser nodes. And for the people who are playing with shaders, deactivate the shaders because you can't see the laser. So if I quickly do this, let's connect it by sneak right clicking on one of the laser nodes and then right click on this one. You can see this laser right now. If I activate my shaders again, it's gone. You can't see it. So this is very annoying. If you want to set this up, maybe deactivate the shaders for a couple of minutes and then it should work. Also, one thing you can see here, what you definitely should do is set this one to auto split. This is the most efficient way of burning the materials. And as you can see, it's doing its job. It's going to burn all the nickel down until we only have 200 left. Maybe where's nickel? Yeah, here. But I don't think we have enough space in our furnace, so let's take care of that. For that, we're going to place down a chest right over here. So this is where we want to put our items in. We just open up our storage, and here we add in an item card. Here it's important, let's quickly get to that, is a channel, because otherwise there might quickly get items might get moved directly from this one over to this one. If we now do insert, it's going to move the dust inside of here because there's no filter where it's going to put those items inside of this right now. So this is important. Let's quickly remove this. And that's why we need the color filter. So what we're going to do is add in the item card here. We're going to set it, for instance, to orange, and that's only what we really need. We're going to set this one to extract. So this is right now the one from the furnace. So extracting from the furnace. And if you remember, we output the items at the bottom. So we go back in here, open up this, and change this one to down. So this one is extracting from the bottom part of the block. For the optimal speed, I recommend 2 card overclockers, setting this one to the max amount, to the minimum speed. And then we're almost done on this side. We just add in a node overclocker, which actually allows this laser node to work on both of these item cards at the same time. So it can at the same time move items into the furnace, but at the same time, it can also move items out of the furnace. And then on the input here, we just put our item card, make sure to change this one to the orange, and we just remove our dust. And now only the ingots are going to get moved inside of this. And the only thing we have to do is now to connect this to our storage controller over there. And for that, we're going to just use simple pipes. You can pick whatever you want. You can also do that with a modular router if you don't like pipes. And we just move them over, connect them like this, make sure to output here. And for this amount of like resources, I would recommend you to add at least like a basic upgrade. And now here at the front, we can quickly see our nickel dust is always at 200, our gold dust is always at 200, and now it will like slowly work through all of them and make sure that it only burns 200 of each of them, and these dusts over here are going to stay the same. And over here we can already see our first ingots, and we can also already start locking them up, right? So we have nickel and gold. And one last thing I would recommend you to do, especially if you have a setup like this with a refined storage over here, is to connect them by a external storage, because that way you don't have to go to every single one of them. If you need some dust, you can just go down here, you add in your external storage like this, and then you can just move it from here over to your block. So just as simple as that. The only thing which I would recommend you to not connect is the ores on this side, because they are normally empty. And this concludes our build. And with that, I wish you all an amazing day.